You may have heard that it's difficult to make friends here, but I'm going to make it easier by telling you how to increase your odds. So whether you're planning on moving here or you've already moved here and you've had some difficulties making friends, the goal of this video is to help you do that. I'm sure you've heard two different versions of Minnesota nice. One being that Minnesotans are really friendly and polite and will happily start up a conversation at the grocery store and will definitely help you push you out of a snowbank. And then the other version, and actually the intended version, is that Minnesotans tend to be reserved, mild-mannered, polite, passive-aggressive, and like to avoid conflict. First off, I want to give you some background on how some Minnesotans communicate, but just remember that the 5.7 million people that live here are not all the same. However, you may notice that the communication style is different than it is where you're from. So I'm just going to explain that a little bit. Minnesotans are reserved, they love being courteous, but they also like their space. They also don't like to come off as harsh or aggressive. So you might experience this where somebody says, "Are you sure you want to do it that way?" Instead of saying, "I think you should do it like this, this, and this because this." Or they might say, "Oh, is that what you're gonna wear tonight?" Instead of saying, "Ooh, that's super hideous, I wouldn't leave in that." But again, not all Minnesotans are the same, and there are plenty of people who are blunt and will just say it like it is. Because Minnesotans are more reserved, it might seem like it's harder to make friends. Minnesotans don't like to intrude or be a bother, so it might feel awkward for them to reach out to you if they don't know you very well. I've even done this myself. So there are two women coaches at my gym, and they're super cool. I love talking to them, and I would genuinely like to hang out with them. But I find myself not asking them to hang out because in the back of my head I'm thinking, well, what if I put them on the spot and then they feel like obligated to say yes? I'd rather not ask so that I don't have to put them in that situation. So if you do find yourself in a situation like this, like that, then you are probably going to just have to be the extroverted one and ask them to hang out. Another thing you might notice is that a lot of Minnesotans have had the same friends since high school, so it can feel like it's kind of difficult to get into these groups, but don't get discouraged. I found most of my best friends in my early 20s, and I actually don't talk to anybody that I went to high school with, except for one woman who lives in California. I love her. So here are some ways you can make friends if you're a transplant. One thing you can do is go to a meetup group. It's an app that I'll link in the description box, but there are meetups for everything. There's meetups for book clubs, there's meetups for people who like science, there's meetups for people who like politics, there's meetups for women who don't want children, there's meetups for everything in Minneapolis. I think there's even a meetup for transplants, which I will find because I believe I've seen one. But you tend to connect better with people when you have similar interests, so that's a really great way to kind of start making friends. Another thing you can do is join a gym. Once you start going at the same time on the same days, you tend to see the same people and you just naturally start up conversations. And then once you've been going there for a few months, then you can maybe see if somebody is interested in starting a friendship with you. To make things a little bit easier too, you can always try to make friends in a group. If you're in a group setting, it's a little bit easier just because it takes the pressure off that individual, and it even takes the pressure off of you because you don't feel like you need to entertain each other, or you don't have that anxiousness that maybe you won't have anything to talk about because you have several people that can continue the conversation. And often, if you're in a group, you can build deeper relationships with individuals within that group without the pressure add. I'd also recommend to not be offended if somebody doesn't reach out to you. It's just too easy for days, weeks, months, years to get past you, just because that's the way that life tends to be. So don't get offended if somebody doesn't reach out to you, just reach out to them. I actually met one of my best friends when I was 18. She said, "Oh, we should hang out sometime." And I was kind of thinking, oh, I wonder if it's gonna be one of those things where you say that and then we never actually hang out. But she called me and she said, "Okay, Thursday, we'll come to my house and we'll go get dinner, we'll go do this." And I said, "Okay." And we've been friends ever since. I'd also recommend that you don't get upset when people cancel on you or if they're not reaching out to you as much as you feel like you want to be, because Minnesotans may like to avoid conflict. So if they feel like you're going to get upset every time that they either cancel on you or don't reach out to you as much as you want, then they might, whether it's subconsciously or consciously, they might just start to drift away because it's stressful for them to feel like you're going to get upset every time. I'm going to use my friends as an example, but sometimes they'll have plans, they'll cancel and they'll say, my social battery is just really low and I just want some time alone. Or, hey, I'm super exhausted, I just don't have the energy to be present with anybody else right now. I'm gonna have to cancel. And I totally understand. And when I cancel on them and I give them that explanation or maybe whatever explanation I happen to have, then they are understanding as well. Just remember that just because somebody has free time or free moment doesn't mean they owe it to you. Like, life is so demanding in general. The last thing you want is for somebody, a friend, to demand all of your free time. My friends seem to understand that life is busy and sometimes you just need time for yourself. But I also know that if I were to say, hey, I really need you right now, I really need you to come over, I need somebody, they'd be over here in a heartbeat. Another tip I have for you is try to have deeper conversations. A study actually came out in 2021 that suggests that people enjoy having deeper conversations, but they're much more likely to engage in small talk. And this is often due to the fact that they overestimated their fears of awkwardness or fears of vulnerability or fears of being judged, or they just maybe didn't think that people weren't interested in hearing about them. So for the study, they put people in pairs and they gave them a list of questions to ask each other. So the small talk questions were questions like, how do you like the weather today? Or what's your favorite TV show right now? And the deeper questions, something like, when's the last time that you cried in front of somebody? Or what is your biggest regret in life? Questions that would make people a little bit more vulnerable. So what they found is that people in both groups, their expectations of awkwardness were higher than their experience awkwardness, and their expectations of connectedness were lower than their experience connectedness. So they thought that they were going to feel more awkward and less connected, but it was actually the opposite that happened. And they also found that the people that had those deeper conversations felt more connected to their partner than those who had the small talk conversations. So my point is, I really think that you should try to have deeper conversations with people, and think it's a lot more likely that you'll make friends faster. Because there is this thing, like when you are vulnerable with somebody or they're vulnerable with you, you do tend to feel a deeper connection to that person. So when you meet somebody and you have a few conversations, eventually ask them about their hopes and dreams and their philosophies. Act like you're interviewing them, and naturally they'll want to ask you the same questions back. And don't give up, because once you break down the barriers of a Minnesotan, they're likely to be one of the best friends you've ever had. If you're trying to make friends here, there are some things that you should consider. Also remember that some people are busy with their work or their families, and they may not have any extra time for new friends because they're already having enough time trying to find time for the friends they already have. But don't try to befriend those people. Look for people who are seeking or open to new friendships. Another thing you should think about is if you're having a really rough time, maybe you're a dick. There is a difference between being blunt and being an asshole. I have this friend, and he looked at one of my girlfriends one day and he said, oh, it looks like you're getting kind of fat. Okay, you're not being blunt, you're just being an asshole, because she never asked for your unsolicited opinion on her body. Please don't misunderstand this like I'm saying that if you haven't made any friends that it's your fault and you're the problem. I'm just saying some people need to take a look at the mirror and not blame the 5.7 million people that live here. It's also important to remember that you're not gonna connect with everybody. Not everybody's gonna like you, and you're not gonna like everybody. It's not very common for somebody to have 50 plus deep relationships with people. Although I'm not saying it's not possible, I'm just saying it's not common. All I'm saying is that don't get discouraged if you don't connect with the very first person that you meet. I can totally understand this feeling. I lived out of the country for a little bit, and I remember going to a hostel, and there was a group of people, and they were laughing, and they're having like the best time ever. And I kind of tried to talk to them, but I didn't really feel like I was included. They kind of seemed like they had their own clique. They had been there for a couple of weeks, and I wasn't part of their group. I know that feeling. And so sometimes I would just stay in the hostel and then maybe try to meet up with whatever newbie. And sometimes I would switch hostels altogether because I'm like, I don't connect with anybody here. Nobody's gonna be my friend. So don't get me wrong, I know that feeling and know it's uncomfortable, but you just have to get out of your comfort zone to increase your chances of finding a really good friendship. If you're moving to a completely new city where you don't know anybody, you're already putting yourself out of your comfort zone. There are so many people that have never left their state or even their hometown. So why not put yourself out there and make some friends, and don't give up, because your best friendships could be one interaction away.